Hello everybody, one more time. My name is Alex Centeno with Mercado's Interactive Partners, and in this episode we're going to be taking a look at something really cool, I think, and it's going to be a very brief video. I guess I've seen a trend where most popular videos are under 6 minutes, so we're going to try to do that this time. So before we begin, let me tell you about what this video is all about. We're going to be talking about histograms, and some people say histograms and they automatically get turned off and say that's definitely not for me. But in digital media, you really need to learn how to use histograms. Histograms are a visual representation of what's going on with your image in terms of values and how the light is being represented. So it can actually give you a good indication of how to adjust the different components of your image, the midtones, the highlights, the shadows, and things like that. So I think it's extremely beneficial. So before we begin, let's take a look at a sponsor for today.
Mercados is a strategic web studio located in the Research Triangle area in North Carolina. Our focus is to help businesses of all sizes make more money through the use of strategic website design, custom digital media development, and web marketing. For more information, you can contact us at 888-525-8117 or visit us on the web at mercados.com. Mercados, creatively smart.
All right, great. So here we are in Photoshop, and I have here a simple gradient. So as you can see here in my layers, I have 3 layers here. I'm just gonna call this one gradient. I'm gonna call this one white, which is just a white layer. And then I have an image here. This time I'm actually using a personal image. Most of the time we use images from stock photo or stock exchange. And in this particular case, we are actually using an image from my personal photo collection. So let's take a look at this first. First of all, let me just show you what I have here in terms of the gradient overlay. So I have a gradient that is going from 100% black. All right, so you can see here 0, 0, 0, so it's 100% black, and then it's going to 100% white. 255, 255, 255, so 100% white. So there's a gradient, linear, going from side to side here. Okay, and basically, let me go here to image mode and show you that we're starting with an RGB color spectrum, and let's go ahead and change to 16 bits per channel because it's a better spectrum. Although probably in the video cast you're not gonna see any differences. So let's take a look at our histograms. So if you go to Window, Histograms, you can actually get this panel right here that I have here. I'm going to put it right here in the center just to show you a couple of things about it. So the first thing is that we have this little icon at the top right corner. If I click on that, I can actually get all these different options there. So let's start with, well, first of all, on cache refresh. What that means, and you can also just click on this refresh button to get that, is that sometimes the histograms, in terms of getting drawn faster, they actually use a cached version as opposed to the actual thing that is representing your image. So if you really want an accurate representation of what's going on in your image right at the very second, then get rid of the cache. Okay, so that's first option. Then we have 3 different views: the compact view, which is a very small one, the expanded view, which is a little bit bigger, and then finally all the channels view, which also includes the channels depending on your spectrum. So let me just change real quick to another spectrum like lab color to show you, and I'm gonna say don't merge, so that this one changed to the lightness channels, this one to the A, and this one to the B channel. So depending on the spectrum that you have, those channels in the histogram are going to change as well. So let's go back to RGB color, don't merge. Excellent. So now we have red, green, and blue representations in histograms. I wish that you could make it bigger, but this is the biggest that you can actually get in your histograms. And then you have like here that you can actually show channels in color or in black and white, like here. I actually like them better in color. And then you can actually get the statistics. This one's right here. So show statistics, it gives you a little bit of a representation of what is the mean, what is the average of value of the representation, what is the standard deviation from that value, the center value, the number of pixels used to calculate the histogram, the level. So when I put actually my cursor on top of the histogram, I can see in what level. So if you look here, you can see in what level I'm actually hovering over. Also the number of, this count is the number of pixels that are under that level. So if you come here, of course, this one has a little bit more values there. And then also like the percentile, how many values are in that selection. So if I actually click and drag, I can see that this selection right here that I'm using has 11.67% of the values of all the image. Great. So as you can see here, it's an interesting thing because for some reason, well, first of all, let me just talk in general about the histogram, and I'm going to try to do this really quickly. The first thing is that you see that I have no blacks or no shadows and no whites or no highlights here. That's very interesting because this image goes from 100% black to 100% white in a gradient, right? So that should be the case. But as you can see here, I'm actually bigger. The square is bigger than the actual canvas, which shows that all that counts is really what is being displayed in the canvas. So now that I resized it, now you can see that it goes all the way to the left and all the way to the right in our display. And so basically, these values right here are the values that are representing the shadows in our image. These values around here are the ones that represent our midtones. And these values right here are the values that are going to represent our highlights. And each channel has that same thing. This thing here is the representation of the main histogram there, and so I can change it to, for example, just the red channel, so it looks like this one and so forth. Green, blue, I can change it to the luminosity. So instead of actually having the representation of the RGB, then I have the luminosity channel, and then I have the colors. In this case, because it's a gradient from white to black, only grayscale, then of course I have no different colors, and we're going to change that in a second to show you. Also, I can change the source, so I can do it just based on the selected layer, even if it's not the topmost layer. So if I select this layer, which is my photo, and I select here my selected layer, then it actually represents the histogram for that layer, although that's not what I'm seeing in the screen. Great. Excellent. So let me go ahead and select the entire image back here. So this is the way that a gradient from white here all the way to black here looks like. Okay, it looks like a U almost. Okay, let me go ahead and get rid of that and make it 50% gray completely. So I'm getting rid of the gradient there. And now I have a layer that is representing absolutely 50% gray. And as you can see, I actually just have one line here of the histogram that is represented all the way to the top. So all my values in the image are in this 50% gray. And 50% gray is made out of like a combination of the same amount of red, green, and blue. So that's why you see here that one line also in the red, green, and blue channels. That's actually an interesting thing. If you didn't know that gray was made in the RGB spectrum by the combination of red, green, and blue. Let's get rid of this one. So I'm going to get rid of this. And now we have the white layer here. And as you can see, now our histogram is only representing here one line all the way to the right, because we have just 100% highlight there. And same thing, here we have the same amount of red, green, and blue, so 100% white. Let's go ahead and change this to black, 0, 0, 0, 0. Now the line moved here, same amount of red, green, and blue. So every time we have gray, so let's actually do it gray, but without actually having 50% gray. So here, this definitely is not 50% gray, but we see that it's continuing to be gray because all the lines of the different colors are aligning. You can see it, of course, here, where you see the red, green, and blue amounts are the same. So red, green, and blue amounts are the same. All right, so that's a representation of something like that. So finally, let's take a look at a regular image here. So this is our histogram, and you can see the representation of each one of the channels there. And you can see here the red, the green, and the blue channels there. And we're taking a look here at the colors. We can see the representation of the actual RGB, which is a combination of those colors. So pretty cool stuff. For example, and I can show you with this, with the levels. Let's say that our image looked like this. No, actually, let's not do it like that. Let's do this. Let's say that our image looked like this. Okay? That means that it's lacking contrast. And the definition of lack of contrast here in our histogram is that it is not using all of our dynamic range. And we could be using all of our dynamic range. And of course, it depends on photography direction, because not necessarily do you ever want to have a no contrast image. Sometimes there's valid reasons to have low contrast images. But if you're actually pursuing to have a photo that is realistic, that actually represents as much as possible what was in real life seen, then of course you want to use as much of the dynamic range as possible. And the reason is because our eyes have a higher dynamic range than cameras do. And so always photos are going to be a lackluster representation of what we can actually see, because our eyes have an enormous dynamic range. And photos like HDR or high dynamic range photos do a better job at representing what we could have seen, except that they put it all together. The eyes can actually adjust to dark, and they can adjust to highlights very easily and very efficiently. Of course, it still has limits, but has a much better dynamic range than the camera. So let's say that actually we wanted to use the most amount of our dynamic range. Then when you will be presented with a histogram that looks like this, you would adjust the levels. Okay, you would adjust the levels so that you actually use all your dynamic range. So the histogram is, of course, representing the dynamic range and how it's being used. So not necessarily when you look at the histogram, you're looking for a correct histogram or an incorrect histogram. However, it gives you clues of if the image is overexposed or underexposed, depending on what you expect the histogram to look like. So let's say that you're taking a photo and you look at your camera, and let's see, let me make something realistic here. So let's not do it with exposure. Let me just do it with just curves, I guess. Yeah, I guess that would be a little bit more realistic. So let's say that you saw this. After you took the photo on your camera, you saw something like this. What this represents, of course, is that most of the pixels of the image are actually in the upper range here. And what that means is that I didn't use all this when I took the photo. And so when you're coming to post-production, then it's going to be very difficult to do whatever you prefer with the image because you lack all this information already. So ideally what you want is to take a photo that uses all your dynamic range so that if you want to make a very dark scene, you can, but if you want to make it lighter, you can, so you have like the most amount of flexibility. So something like this. So that means that I actually have a good representation, a good amount of darks, and I have like good information in my darks, but I also have like a good information in my midtones, and I have a good amount of information in my highlights. That's great, because what that means is that even if I didn't do a great job in taking the photo in the first place, at the very least, the information that I have is enough so that in post-production, I can actually change it to what I prefer. And when I mean like a bad photo in the first place, it could be a white balance issue, so it looks completely green, or it has a cast, or things of that nature. So anyways, I hope that this overview has been helpful in terms of understanding histograms a little bit better. I guess we went over a little bit, like always. I mean, I keep trying to give you guys a video of 6 minutes and it ends up being double that. But I mean, I was trying to do a very brief overview of histograms for you. But anyways, I guess next time we'll try to do it with a timer. Maybe that way it'll work a little bit better. So anyways, I hope this has been useful. If you have any questions or comments about histograms or about any of our other videos, just let us know at mercados.com. Again, my name is Alex Centeno, and thank you for watching. Bye-bye.